So, Prof, thank you for joining us, and thanks to the South African Hypertension Society, who've introduced May Measurement Month, which, as I said, is brought to you by the South African Hypertension Society. It's an annual event that takes place between the 1st of May and 31st of July that were established on World Hypertension Day, and it's held on the 17th of May every year with volunteer health professionals at local screening sites in more than 90 countries. I'm Echbert Boezak, and I'm delighted to have Professor Angela Woodiwiss. Did I pronounce that correctly, Angela?
Yes, you did. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you. She's the Director of Cardiovascular Pathophysiology at the University of the Witwatersrand. She also serves as a board member of the South African Hypertension Society and is the principal investigator for May Measurement Month in South Africa. Thank you so much, Angela. Let's start with a sort of basic thing. Triple M, May Measurement Month. What's the significance of that?
First of all, thank you very much for hosting me and for allowing me this opportunity to talk about May Measurement Month. May Measurement Month is essentially a global blood pressure screening campaign. It was initiated in 2017 by the International Society of Hypertension in recognition of this important need for people to know what their blood pressure is. And consequently, there's this voluntary campaign run between May and August annually since 2017, obviously missing out the COVID year of 2020, where we couldn't do screening.
So, why is it so important? You talk about blood pressure, but why is it so significant and so important for our health?
Well, the problem with high blood pressure is it's what we call the silent killer, in that it has no signs and symptoms. So people are totally unaware that they have high blood pressure because there's no sign or symptom associated with it. Yes, sometimes people might complain of a headache, but that's usually when the blood pressure is very, very high. So it's very, very important to screen on a regular basis. And we encourage all adults to screen and check their blood pressure at least annually. And obviously, as you get older, twice annually. Because the important thing is that if you do detect that you've got high blood pressure, you can treat it. And if you don't, you end up with what we call cardiovascular diseases, things like heart failure, kidney failure, strokes, coronary artery disease, which obviously nobody wants. So we would ideally like to pick up the high blood pressure, treat it, and prevent all of those cardiovascular diseases.
What are the trends? What has it shown you? Is it been on the rise? As you mentioned, it's a silent killer. Do you notice that it's on the rise?
Well, cardiovascular disease essentially is a number one global killer. I would say responsible currently for about 11 million deaths per year, so about 30,000 deaths per day. And to put this in, and then I'll come back to your question, to put this in some sort of perspective in South Africa, and certainly not to diminish the tragedy associated with COVID in 2020, but in South Africa, there were roughly about 6.7% of deaths due to COVID in 2020. In comparison, in that same year, about 18% of South African deaths were attributed to cardiovascular disease. And we know that hypertension or raised blood pressure is one of the primary determinants or primary causes of cardiovascular disease. So that's just to give you some sort of numbers and statistics. Whether it's on the rise or not, in developed countries like sort of Western Europe and and Northern America, cardiovascular disease has sort of plateaued and is starting to decline. Whereas in Africa, Eastern Europe, and Southern America, it's basically increasing. So we're getting more and more concerned because cardiovascular disease is not plateauing here in South Africa, it's getting worse. And what's particularly alarming is that deaths from cardiovascular disease tend to occur roughly 15 to 20 years earlier in Africans compared to Europeans, for example. And so we're very, very worried about our young population and our working population. And we certainly don't want them to have high blood pressure and consequently things like strokes, heart attacks, etc., renal failure.
That's some very sobering stats. But let's get back to South Africa. And how long has South Africa been involved in May Measurement Month? And is that part of a bigger campaign to make people aware of the statistics that you've just shared with us?
South Africa joined MMM in 2017 when it started. So we've been part of MMM since its initiation. Roughly, we screen about 5,000 adults a year. So to date, and obviously we didn't do any in 2020, we've screened over 25,000 people. But it's a start and it's certainly better than nothing. And it relies purely on volunteers doing the screening in their spare time, etc. So we're quite proud of the fact that at least we've reached 5,000 adults, of which at least half of them each year were not aware that they had high blood pressure. So every year we pick up 2,500 people who may not otherwise have known that they've got high blood pressure, which is certainly better than nothing. Yeah.
During which months is Triple M? Is it throughout the year?
Because World Hypertension Day is the 17th of May, it kind of is always started in May, and it roughly runs for about 3 to 3.5 months. So we do screening May, June, July, and usually sort of the first week or two of August.
You seem to have your work cut out um, to make people aware of the silent killer. But who can participate? Who are you targeting specifically with Triple M?
Anyone can come and have their blood pressure screened. It's anybody who's 18 years or older. Other than that, no exclusions whatsoever. Even if somebody does have hypertension or high blood pressure, come along, have a check of your blood pressure, get it done. To say no exclusions, anyone who's 18 years or older.
So, how easy is the process, Angela? Where can a guy like me, I'm 52 and I do like my steak and I can see that my girth is getting a bit bigger, but where can people go to have their blood pressure measured as part of Triple M?
Well, we have various screening sites, depending on who's agreed to volunteer each year. This year we have sites at Northwest University, UCT, Cape Town, by Groote Hospital, Mthatha at Walter Sisulu University. We also have an NGO in Vosloorus who is involved in the screening. There's general community screening at Walter Sisulu Gardens out in Roodepoort area. And Jabulani in Soweto, Mandla Safe Hub in Alexandra. And then in the Eastern Cape, mainly in the PE area, various Clinicare pharmacies. Those are the sites we have at the moment. Every now and again, new sites agree to volunteer. And so we will post those sites on the Hypertension Society website so people can go and look at which site is in their area. Great.
Prof, now, in an economy as tough as ours, South Africans will probably wonder what the cost is involved. Is there a cost or is it for free?
No, the screening is totally for free. Anyone can come and have their blood pressure checked. So there's a list of about 20 questions which are asked. They're usually just answered on an app on the cell phone, and then 3 blood pressure measurements and a heart rate are taken, but at no cost whatsoever.
Oh, that's a relief, Prof. But I do want to ask, should you encounter the bad news finally strikes you that you do have high blood pressure, what
Yes.
happens if you are found to have those symptoms?
Well, it depends on how bad those symptoms are. So we work on a blood pressure threshold of 140/90. So anybody who's got a blood pressure of 140 or above, or 90 and above, would then be considered to possibly have raised blood pressure. If it's much, much higher than that, we would automatically give a person a letter of referral. If it's only marginally elevated, then we would advise someone to be careful about what they eat, avoid salt, fatty foods, maybe try and stop smoking if they can, start exercising. So we'd give a whole list of health advice and tips and a referral letter to have your blood pressure checked, see your GP, go to the clinic and reassess, and they will then decide whether you need to start medication or not. So we certainly are not dispensing medication right there and then.
So it's certainly, Professor, certainly not the end of the world, though. But can I, for example, participate in Triple M, even if I do have high blood pressure?
Absolutely, definitely. It's always a good idea to check your blood pressure regularly, especially if you've got high blood pressure. Um, if you've got high blood pressure, you should have it checked even more regularly because you need to make sure that the medication you're taking is working. Just like with any chronic illness, one needs to manage it carefully. So yes, anyone, whether they've got high blood pressure or not, can come to Triple M and have their blood pressure checked.
Professor, thank you so much. That was a wonderful conversation. I, for one, will now be checking my gym membership and also to check if my blood pressure is well within the range. But thank you so much. That was a very, very informative conversation, Professor. And I'm going to be one of those people that will join 1 million other people across the world to get my blood pressure checked as part of May Measurement Month. Take part in the big squeeze. Thank you to Sandoz, Xavier, Pharma Dynamics, and Zydos for the unconditional support. And to learn more about hypertension or to find a screening site near you, follow the South African Hypertension Society on social media or visit www.hypertension.org.za. I'll repeat that again, www.hypertension.org.za. Thank you so much for this conversation, Professor. This was very, very informative.
Thank you very much for hosting the discussion. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.